ओम श्री परमात्मने नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुद्रयेत्। श्रीमद् भगवत गीता साधक संजीवनी फर्स्ट चैप्टर ऑब्जर्विंग द आर्मीज ऑन द बैटलफील्ड ऑफ कुरुक्षेत्र verses 28 to 47. Arjuna is filled with deep sorrow and unmanliness. He recounts the evil consequences of the destruction of the race and family traditions, and Sanjay describes Arjuna's condition that he is overwhelmed with grief. Arjuna is very much dejected after thinking over the consequences of the war for the family, tribe, and country, and speaks the following words. Verses 28 to 30. Arjuna vacha drishtve mam swajanam Krishna yuyusum samupasthitam siddhanti mama gatrani mukham cha parishusyati vepathuscha sharire me roma harshascha jayate gandivam sraste हस्तात्वक चैव परिदेहते नाचा शक्नोम्यवस्थातुं भ्रमातीव च मे मनः. Arjuna said, O Krishna, at the sight of these kinsmen thus arrayed here, prompted by war, my limbs give way, my mouth is parched, my body quivers, and hair stands on end. The bow Gandiva slips from my hand. My skin burns all over. My mind is reeling and I am not able even to stand. Comment. Arjuna is worried about the death of warriors in both the armies because he thinks that both the warring groups are his own kith and kin. After describing the 8 signs of his sadness in the previous verses, now Arjuna mentions the inappropriateness of the war after seeing the inauspicious omens. Verse 31. Nimitani cha pashyami vipreetani keshva nacha shrayon pashyami hatva swajanam ahave. O Keshva, I find the omens also inauspicious, nor do I see any good in killing my kith and kin in battle. Comment. Enthusiasm in the beginning of an activity leads it to success, while dilemma leads to failure. So Arjuna says that the omens, that his limbs are giving way, his body is shaking, his mouth is getting parched, are not auspicious. Besides them, other omens such as the falling of a meteor, untimely eclipse, earthquake, horrible sound of birds and animals, obliteration of the black mark in the moon, falling of blood from clouds are inauspicious and all of them augur ill. Arjuna does not see any good in killing his kith and kin, either in this world or in the next world, because only a sinner can destroy his kith and kin. Therefore, sin alone will accrue to them by killing his kith and kin, and that sin will lead them to hells. Arjuna wants to say that whether he goes by the omens or by this common sense, certain it is that it is futile to wage a war, and there is no good in it for them and for the entire world. In the next verse, Arjuna expresses his reluctance to get such an obnoxious victory. Verse 32. Na kankshe vijyam Krishna na cha rajyam sukhani cha kim no rajena govinda kim bhogera jivitena va. O Krishna, I covet not victory, nor kingdom, nor pleasure. O Govinda, of what use to us is kingdom or luxuries or even life? Comment. Victory, kingdom and pleasures seem pleasant only when there is a desire for them. But we have no desire for them. So, how can they be pleasant to us? After killing our kith and kin, we have no desire to live, because after death, who will enjoy? those pleasures. The so-called pleasures will rather lead us to worry and sadness. In the next verse, Arjuna gives the reason why he has no desire for victory, etc. Verse 33. येषाम् अर्थे काङ्क्षितं नो राज्यं भोगः सुखानि च ता इमे अवस्थिता युद्धे प्राणान् त्यक्त्वा धनानि च. Those for whose sake we seek kingdom, enjoyments and pleasures are here arrayed on the battlefield, staking their lives and property. Comment: whatever kingdom, pleasures, and enjoyments we desire to have, we want them for our relatives and friends. With them, we want to please and serve our teachers, uncles, granduncles, and sons, etc. We don't want to possess them for our personal enjoyment. But all of them have decided to sacrifice even their lives on the war front. If all of them are killed, for whom should we desire kingdom, prosperity, and pleasures? In the next two verses, there is a description of the people for whom Arjuna wants kingdom, pleasures, and enjoyments. Verses 34 and 35. आचार्याः पितरः पुत्रास्तथैव च पितामहः मातुलः श्वशुरः पौत्रः श्यालाः सम्बन्धिनस्तथा एतान् न हन्तुम् इच्छामि घ्नतोऽपि मधुसूदन अपि त्रैलोक्यराज्यस्य हेतोः किं नु महि कृते. Teachers, uncles, fathers, sons, as well as grand-uncles, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other relatives. Though they may kill me, I would not seek to slay them, even for the sovereignty of the three worlds. How then for this earth? Now Arjuna justifies his intention not to slay his kith and kin even from the point of view of the consequences. Verse 36. Nihatya dhartrashtranaha ka pritiha sya janardana papam eva shrayat asman hatvetan atainaha. O Janardana, what delight can we derive by slaying the sons of Dhritarashtra? Sin alone will accrue to us by slaying these desperados. Comment: Janardana, the name of Sri Krishna means a person who is worshipped by people for prosperity and emancipation. There are 6 kinds of desperados: one who sets fire, one who poisons, one who murders, one who seizes wealth, one who usurps kingdom, and one who kidnaps women. Duryodhana and his companions committed all these criminal offences. They secretly set fire to the residence where the Pandavas were expected to be sleeping. They poisoned Bhima and threw him into water. They made an attempt on the life of the Pandavas while gambling. Deceitfully, they deprived the Pandavas of their wealth and kingdom, and in the assembly, Duryodhana insulted Draupadi by calling her his waiting maid and persuaded Jayadratha to kidnap Draupadi, and Jayadratha kidnapped her. In the scriptures, it is mentioned that there is no sin in killing a desperado, but it is also mentioned in the scriptures that non-violence is a great virtue. Therefore, why should we slay our kith and kin out of anger and greed? Though Duryodhana etc. being desperados deserve to be killed, yet sin will accrue to us as a result of such action because they are our kith and kin. It is mentioned in the scriptures that one who kills his kith and kin is a great sinner. So, how can we kill them? Therefore, it is better to break off our relationship with them rather than to kill them. In the same way as relationship can be cut asunder with the son, but he can't be slain. Having pointed out the evil consequences of war, Arjuna now dwells upon the sheer impropriety of waging the war. Verse 37. Tasmanarha vayam hantum dhartrashtran swabandhvan swajanam hi katham hatva sukhinaha syama madhva. O Madhva, we should not therefore slay the sons of Dhritarashtra, our kinsmen. For how can we, by killing our own kinsmen, be happy? Comment. Delusion, which is born of the sense of mind, deprives Arjuna of his sense of duty as a member of the warrior class. Where there is delusion, there is no discretion. When discretion is suppressed by delusion, the sense of duty gets blurred. Now, the question arises why Duryodhana does not think along the same lines as Arjuna is thinking, since he is also their kith and kin. Arjuna explains this in the two verses that follow. Verses 38 and 39. यद्यप्येते न पश्यन्ति लोभोपहत चित्सः कुलाक्षया कृतं दोषं मित्रद्रोहे च पातकम् कथं न गयामस्माभिः पापाद् अस्मान् निवृत्तितुं कुलाक्षया कृतं दोषं प्रपश्यद्भिर्जनार्दन. Although those people with understanding, discrimination, clouded by greed, don't perceive the evil of destruction of their own race and the sin accruing from enmity towards friends, yet, O Janardana, Krishna, why should we, who see clearly the sin involved in the destruction of the family, not think of turning away from such a sin? Comment. Greed consists in desiring to have more and more of wealth, property, praise, respect, and rank. It is because of greed that Duryodhana etc. have lost discretion, and so they are not thinking about the disastrous consequences of the war and the sin that will accrue out of it. This inordinate greed had deprived them of their sense of discretion, and little do they realize that the kingdom for which they are bent upon by committing the sin of destroying their kith and kin will not stay long with them. The pleasure of possession is soon followed by the pain of deprivation, which far outweighs the pleasure of possession. With minds clouded by greed for kingdom, they don't perceive the deadly sin which will accrue by destroying their own race. An important fact. Here Arjuna is thinking about the greed of Duryodhana etc. But he is not thinking about his own infatuation and delusion. So he can't understand his duty. This is the rule that a man can't perceive his failings so long as he perceives defects in others. He feels rather proud of his superiority that he has no defect, while the fact is that everyone generally possesses one defect or the other. If we find fault with others, it is also a defect. Being proud of one's own virtues and finding fault with others are the two defects which we don't perceive in us, though we do possess them. Thus, Arjuna can't perceive his own infatuation and delusion because he is finding fault with Duryodhana and is proud of his virtue. All evils persist under the canopy of pride. Now, in the next 5 verses, Arjuna mentions the sins accruing from destruction of one's own race. Verse 40. Kulakshaya pranashyanti kula dharmaha snatnaha dharme nashte kullam krisanam adharmo bhavatyuta. With the destruction of a family, its age-long family traditions disappear, and with the disappearance of family traditions, impiety takes hold of the entire family. Comment. In the war, there is destruction of the family. The family has its age-long traditions and time-honored usages. But when the family is destroyed, its pious traditions, which lead the living and dead members of the family to benediction, also perish because no one remains to maintain them. When the pious traditions and pious conduct perish, people lose their virtues and righteousness, and impiety takes hold of the entire family. Now the question arises how impiety takes hold of the entire family when it is destroyed. The answer is that the people who wage the war are killed, but impiety takes hold of the children and women who do not take part in the battle but are left behind. The reason is that when the conversant and experienced persons die in the battle, no one is left behind to control the children and women and to teach them good conduct and decent behavior. So they don't behave with decorum that is supposed to mark the righteous persons. So impiety takes hold of them. Verse 41. अधर्माभिभवात् कृष्णा प्रदुष्यन्ति कुलस्त्रियः स्त्रीषु दुष्टासु वर्षणीया जायते वर्णसङ्करः. With the growth of impiety, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupt, and with the corruption of women, O Varshaniya, there ensues an intermixture of castes. Comment. By following righteousness, inner sense is purified. With the purification of the inner sense, intellect becomes pure and pious intellect has discrimination between the right and the wrong. But when there is growth of impiety in the family, the conduct of the members in the family becomes bad. The bad conduct fouls the inner sense, and the foul inner sense makes the intellect tamsi. The intellect which veils knowledge and binds one to heedlessness is called tamsi. With this tamsi intellect, men lose discrimination, regard the undesirable as desirable and the desirable as undesirable, and act against the ordinance of the scriptures. With this sort of intellect, the woman become corrupt, namely unchaste. Corrupt women give birth to hybrids. If the man and the woman belong to different castes, the offspring born of the couple is known as hybrid. Verse 42. Sankro narkayeva kulaghanaam kulasya patanti pitro hesham lupta pindodak kriyaha. Intermixture of castes leads the race and also destroyers of the race to hell. Deprived of the offsprings of rice ball and water, the means of their race also have a downfall. Comment. The offsprings that are born of the intermixture of castes are not religious minded and do not possess decorum and rectitude because they themselves are the product of persons without decorum. So they behave against the traditions and decorum of the race. Those who kill the persons of the race in the war are called destroyers of the race. Such persons lead not only themselves but also the whole race to hell because of the destruction of the traditions of the race. The means of the destroyers of the race fall because they don't get the offerings of rice ball and water from them. The reason is that when they get these offerings, because of those virtuous actions, they go to the lofty worlds. But when they don't get those offerings, they can't continue to live in those worlds and they are degraded. The descendant who is a hybrid has no regard for his ancestors, so he has no sentiments to offer anything to them. Moreover, even if he offers anything, such as obsequies, as a social custom without any regard and against the ordinance of the scriptures, that is not received by the means. The reason is that he is not eligible to perform such rites, so they fall. Verse 43. दोषेर एतेह कुलाघनानां वर्णा संकरा करकेह उत्साद्यन्ते जाति धर्माः कुला धर्माश्च शाश्वतः. The age-long caste traditions and family customs of the destroyers of the race get ruined because of the intermixture of castes created by the bad deeds of these race destroyers. Comment: what are Kula Dharma and Jati Dharma? In every caste, a family has its own traditions, customs, and decorums which are known as Kula Dharma, whereas the traditions of a caste as a whole are known as Jati Dharma or Varna Dharma. These traditions are general and they are approved of by the scriptures. These traditions get ruined if they are not followed. Verse 44. उत्साना कुला धर्माणां मनुष्याणां जनार्दना नरके नियतं वासो भवतीत्यानुश्रुश्रुमा. We have heard, O Janardana, that men who have lost their family traditions dwell in hell for an indefinite period of time. Comment: God has endowed man with discretion and the right to perform new deeds. Hence, he is free to perform good or bad actions. He should use discretion in performing actions. But he, being overpowered by the greed of pleasures, etc., does not use his discretion and acts against the ordinance of the scriptures and family traditions. Consequently, he is censured, insulted, and looked down upon in this life and suffers the tortures of hell for a long time in the life to come. This is what we have heard from our elders and ancestors. In the verse that follows, we are told how Arjuna was affected by the description of the disastrous consequences of fighting a battle. Verse 45. Aho bata mat papam kartum vyavasita vayam yad rajya sukhalobhina hantum swajana mudhyataha. Alas, goaded by the lust for throne and enjoyment, we are bent on perpetrating the great sin of killing our kinsmen. Comment: in this verse, Arjuna wants to say that a man can carry out the behest of scriptures and teachers, etc., only by honoring his own good ideas and his own knowledge. But he who dishonors them can't adopt virtuous principles of the scriptures and teachers. Thus, good thoughts and ideas don't spring up in him. Then, who can check him from possessing evil thoughts and performing evil actions? Similarly, if we dishonor our knowledge, who can check us from committing this great sin of killing our kinsmen? Here, Arjuna is thinking about the disastrous consequences of the war, and so he is not willing to wage the war. But he is not thinking that his feelings of attachment, selfishness, and delusion for the family are responsible for the sort of behavior which is totally wrong for the thoughtful, righteous, and brave member of the warrior class. Engrossed in surprise and sorrow, Arjuna sets forth his decision arrived at after these arguments in the verse that follows. Verse 46. Yadi mam apratikaram ashastram shastrapanyaha dhartarashtra rane hanyustanme kshemataram bhavet. It would indeed be better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, armed with weapons, killed me in battle while I was unarmed and unresisting. Comment: Arjuna says, if I turn away from the war, perhaps our opponents will also recoil from it. Why will they fight when we are determined not to fight? But even if, regarding us as their enemy, they jealously armed with weapons kill me, that will indeed be in my own interest, because it will be a kind of repentance for the determination which I had made in the war to kill my preceptors, and I shall be purified of the sins. It means that if I don't wage the war, I will escape the sin and my race will not be destroyed. An important fact: the worldly people will support the arguments given by Arjuna. The reason is that as Arjuna is full of attachment and infatuation, the worldly people also belong to the same class. In the preceding verse, Arjuna expressed his intention based on many arguments. What he did after this is contained in the verse that follows. Verse 47. Sanjaya uvacha evam uktva Arjunah sankhye rathopastha upavishat visrijya sasharam chapam shoka samigna mansaha. Arjuna, with his mind agitated by grief on the battlefield, having spoken thus and having laid down his bow and arrows, sank into the hinder part of the chariot. Comment. Empowered by delusion, Arjuna perceives good in turning away from the war and even in his death. And finally, having abandoned his bow and arrows and overwhelmed with grief, sits on the seat of the chariot. Thus, we see that it is a delusion which changes a hero's, Arjuna's, stout-heartedness to soft-heartedness and manliness to effeminacy. Om Tat Sat. All glories to Parthasarthi Lord Shri Krishna. All glories to Bhagavad Vani Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Shri Hari Arpanamastu.